Guys, I'm DW. I have won 3 majors in CSGO, and this is Thorin's YouTube channel.
Golden, the former FNATIC in-game leader who had been standing in for Cloud9 at the E-League Premier, has officially joined the team as presumably their in-game leader. Now, the team already needed 2 players because obviously they needed to replace the departure of Tarek, and then they already were in a stand-in situation. So Sticko apparently will continue to stand in as the 5th player of the team, but he hasn't officially joined. That's going to continue until the end of September, roughly, because they're going up to and including the Blast Pro Series Istanbul. Now, being as Sticko wasn't in an active lineup, he was already benched by Mouse, or released. You had Golden wasn't in the Fnatic lineup. He had been replaced by technically Draken, but obviously his role by Exist. There's no point using my usual model of like, should those teams have let them go? Should this team sign them? Like, should Cloud9 let their players go? Because their players have already gone anyway before this move was done. So instead, we'll tweak that model and we'll instead just ask more abstractly, what did Cloud9 need as a team? And then look at Golden joining and see what he brings. So first and foremost, I do actually think that the number one thing Cloud9 needs right now is an in-game leader of some stripe. That doesn't necessarily mean a classical tactics in-game leader who's going to run a system, make a lot of calls, like dry run things, playbook, etc. No, I mean, obviously in the NA scene, they've gotten by for a long time some of their best teams with a very loose playing style, a bunch of like veteran players who can do some in-game leading, swapping the role around. That's had success in NA, fair enough. But they did need an in-game leader in this team, especially because the players who used to do that role have left the team now. So in getting an in-game leader, I do personally think they needed a proper in-game leader because in a world where they don't have that much talent in the team at the moment, I think it sets a better foundation. You get a system going, you get more out of the players you do have, and then you can start to add talented pieces, and then you can figure out later on whether or not it needs to be a proper in-game leader. So one good reason to have a proper in-game leader right now is if you bring in new talent, less experienced talent at the top level, he can help find out the role that they should play. He can help fit them into a role. He can help shape the game in a certain area around them, give them spots that work for them. And that is going to enhance your ability to use lesser talent, or rather newer talent, just perceived as lesser because they haven't proven anything yet, to become a top team, which is going to be very valuable in an era of heavy buyouts where it's hard to get even lesser talent at the moment. I also think the other thing Cloud9 clearly needed was some star fragging power. I mean, to replace Tarek, to replace Stewie, they haven't got anyone in Golden and Sticko who is comparable in that sense. These guys can't be star players. They're not going to frag at the level of Tarek. They're not going to have the raw game impact of a player like Stewie. So Golden does fulfill the first of the needs I mentioned. This is someone who, by all accounts, is a real in-game leader. This is one of the reasons they brought him into Fnatic, like after the player break last year, where they tried with the old lineup with Olaf Meister and Dennis to still play that very free-form style with a bunch of all-time great players from Sweden, and they just couldn't get playoff runs, deep finishes. They were never getting anywhere close to a trophy. So they brought in Golden, and they made this lineup, and they had Lekro, and these all look like skill downgrades, like much less experienced pieces without proven history of winning, and they became a better team. They were getting consistently minimum top 8, a lot of top 4 finishes. They were playing elite teams in 3-game series in playoffs. They were looking really good, and then when we had that period of entirely up and down results of like SK falling away, of FaZe not winning a bunch of tournaments, Mouse Sports rising up, Na'Vi just getting hard carried by Simple. In came Fnatic. They were opportunistic. They won IEM Katowice. They won WESG. They got a whole lot of fucking money. And we'd already heard behind the scenes this story after, apparently it began after Star Series, the thought that they wanted to replace Golden and bring in Exist at the time, which they obviously eventually did, but they did it by a circuitous route and a bunch of sort of like boiling the frog approach where you don't just immediately replace him. You gradually switch things around until, oh, what do you know? In the end, it's exactly like I originally always wanted. Now, everyone's been wondering, though, yeah, but why would they want to replace Golden after they win? Because remember, they still did it after they win, even though initially they gave him a little bit more time. So we'll get to that in a minute. In terms of this as a move for Cloud9, I've been calling for this move for, like, let's think not specifically Golden, but bringing in a real in-game leader, even if he's a low-fragging one, because Golden is a low-fragging in-game leader. I've been calling for this type of move for about a year and a half now. I mean, I've made this public on podcasts. I actually suggested to Cloud9 and put them in contact with Hunden, the famed in-game leader of the Danish scene, who famously has played exactly this role. He can run a team, he's a low-fragging in-game leader, pretty low-fragging, incredibly low-fragging, let's be real. But he knows how to run tactics, he's got a long history in Counter-Strike, he's played with many talents throughout the years, he can bring up talents, he can find talents, he can shape some kind of a game around them. He's playing now at a very, very low tier, low level, like class F or something. So as a result, yeah, he's not going to be doing something you'd see now because he hasn't got the player base to do so. But he has touched and been a part of the development of many players throughout Danish history. So examples of these sorts of people I've made the call for in the past from the NA scene, since I didn't know they were actually going to get any Europeans, were obviously FNS and DAPS. These are two players who have a proven track record history of being able to take other talents, maybe not the best talents in NA, maybe the best talents in the world, but take them, shape them, manage a team, run tactics, but adapt to what they want to do to opponents, get upsets with pretty decent kind of consistency. Now, you might ask yourself, but they've just had FNS in this team. Like, why is this going to be any better? Well, that's actually an interesting question because, first of all, I think they fucked up by not just keeping FNS's contract for a little bit longer and then seeing if it was an automatic or a Tarek who left. And then when he left, just bringing FNX back in the lineup and starting over again. I think they actually fucked up big time if they really did do a big buyout and now they just let him go. It doesn't really make sense to me personally. But I guess they wanted to hope that Tarek stayed. Now, that's the main reason why I'm not really worried about this being another FNS situation where he comes in, he doesn't really get the time, doesn't get the opportunity to shape the game, and then he's out the door again and they're like, we didn't think it was the right fit for us. Because, I mean, based on things I heard, it was people like the big names in the team, the big voices like Tarek, who weren't really feeling FNS's style or his mentality or didn't think he had the leadership qualities to be the right in-game leader of their team. So if so, they're going to take over. They're going to say, I don't want this guy, let's get someone else, let's play that loose style again that we won the major with. There aren't any players like that left in this team. I mean, Rush is a soldier. He'll do what's necessary for the team. Skadoodle's incredibly quiet, as everyone knows. And Automatic's like reasonably quiet and at the moment has had motivation issues and therefore, okay, fair enough. He's probably not going to be going around telling, we should cut this guy. And so, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, really. And he's the guy also in the last Cloud9 who wanted to keep the lineup together for a long time with Shroud and with nothing, even when they obviously were having problems in game. Now, also, because there's no Tarek, because there's no Stewie, because there's no big kind of boisterous personalities who dominate the team and massively skew, warp its direction and the way that it has to play and think, that does, as much as it means you lose like great aspects that can help you win for star players, it also does give you this opportunity with Gold. And if you're really committed to him, to shape a team around him, find out what types of players he wants to play with, figure out from the rest of the NA scene who would fit that, then shape a team that can actually execute what he wants to do, and now you're cooking with gas. Now, also, supposedly Golden is an in-game leader who has good comms. I mean, this is something where I saw Pimp on Twitter say that he thought this could be one of the moves of the year, and I said, well, give a reason. And so what Pimp said was, his communication in-game is A+. Playing FPL with him reminds me of the way Glaive used to communicate back in Western Wolves, especially mid-round. Pimp used to be a player under Glaive in Western Wolves in early 2013 when that team went to 2 international finals behind NIP. If there is anything NACS lacks, it's role models in terms of communication and players who's able to call stuff mid-round that makes actual sense. Now, I'd agree with both points there. They have famously, I mean, it's infamous at this point in time, the NA communications being fairly poor, like not very articulate, not concise, doesn't really communicate the right stuff, even if sometimes it communicates a lot in a short space of time. And then also the idea of making mid-round calls that make sense. A lot of mid-round calls in the past from even the really good teams were based around, what are you feeling at this moment? Like, I think I can get a good duel against this one guy. Very loose playing style. Pop flash me in. I'm just going to rush around and like just juke this guy immediately. Like, it wasn't based around like a strategical understanding of like, right, I think we forced a rotation with our pressure play at B. Like, throw the smokes out at balcony and then we'll wrap over on them on the Inferno A site on the arch. No, it wasn't any of that shit, unfortunately. We studied, their patterns. They fall off with the AWP. Like, there wasn't all that shit, I'm afraid. So then actually Device star player of Astralis, also chimed in and he said, I haven't played that much with him, but after what I have, I gotta say he is one of the best non-English speaking pros at communicating. From watching, it feels like he is very good mid-round / reading the game at both CT and T, which is very important in the current meta, in my opinion. So obviously, absolutely amazing, superlative reviews, testimonials by some top players here. And people are going to go, ha, pimp, top player. He was a top player at one point in time in Counter-Strike, mate. One aspect I've brought up on some past podcasts, because it's something that had been communicated to me by a couple of people, and so if I get information that's interesting, I'll put it out there, is that some people did feel as though the community actually had overrated the impact that Golden had on FNATIC. And we're talking about people within FNATIC thinking along these lines. Now, I will say this. I think that's certainly possible. Like, I don't think he came in and it was like a glaive or an existence of like, right, I'm masterminding everything, do everything I say, every move that works, like I came up with that. No, because here's the thing. He came into a team where he was dealing with veteran players, people way more decorated than him, people who had their own playing style in terms of Flasher, JW. These are players who, someone like Lecro has barely played at the top, you know. He didn't really have like, he only really had one piece he could work with in Lecro, maybe, and that's about it. Like, the others were kind of set as to what they wanted to do, and they gave him leeway, apparently. They let him do a lot, but at the same time, they had input in it, etc. And then you've got to add in, people always forget, FNATIC has a coach. They have Jumpy, and Jumpy used to be an in-game leader in the latter days of 1.6. He was in a famous MYM team that came to top 2 at a bunch of international tournaments with Delpan and Modi, and actually Peter, the current NIP coach. And he was an in-game leader, I think, in the early days of CSGO as well. Well, whenever you have a coach who was an in-game leader, and he was a proper tactical in-game leader, or someone who knows how to run a squad, you also have to consider, so if it's a young in-game leader working with that coach is going to have a lot of input as to what he does and help him shape the game and do a lot of those kinds of things with him. And so I actually think that when you look at teams like that, don't just look at the in-game leader, look at it as a balance between the in-game leader and the coach and try and assess what the types of the two are and then what their partnership is. So that's why I could believe that story, that like maybe Jumpy had more input and then the veterans had some degree of like shaping what was happening or enforcing it. So I think part of the issue for Golden might have been, I could believe he was a decent tactical in-game leader and did good comms and set the team up properly, but was he suited to be in what was trying to be a top 4 team in the world? No, probably not, too inexperienced. Did he have the personality to be a true leader in that sense? Also somewhat skeptical. So he's got time to develop these qualities now, but I could certainly understand why the guys from FNATIC went a different approach overall there, even though, yes, personally, I would have tried to probably find a way to keep him in the team. But then again, they had plateaued as a team. They weren't going to make any more big finals as far as I was concerned. NA, as to kind of put my money with Device and Pimp on this one, I think NA does need in-game leaders in general, and this type of in-game leader, proper game manager, is also one I think they need. And you add someone like a Golden, you can now also add more EU players. You can start to bring those over. I know it's been hard in the past to get them, but there's so many big buyouts in NA, why not consider it? The thing is, we look at the players remaining in Cloud9, and we have to ask, what will Golden's tasks, his job be with these players? So, first of all, Automatic, right? He is the only potential star-level talent left in the team. But first of all, as a player, if you look at his career and when he's had success and when he hasn't, he seems to some degree like he needs some kind of motivational help, because at the moment it feels like he's sapped of that and doesn't feel as though the team can win, and that's affecting him. Then he needs some kind of direction in game as to like, we need you to do this for us. This is the kind of role you're going to take over. If he plays more loose style, he can still get numbers, but he's not going to be as effective a player. So you've got to work with someone there who's not quite a long-term veteran. He's played the game a decent amount of time, but at the top level, you know, a year or two. So he's someone that's certainly going to be an uphill challenge. Then you've got Skadoodle. I mean, the same story's been said for every in-game leader. FNS never really got his chance to do this, but you've got to be proactive with him. If he's going to stay in the lineup, you've got to wake up and find a way to get more out of his AWP. You've got to get the fragging. Like, let's at least get to like some 0.7 KPR performances. Can't be so low in terms of the overall fragging. Like, the impact does nothing except sometimes form some basic stability of your team. Like, you're going to need more from Skadoodle, in my opinion. Then, especially use the most expensive gun in the game. And finally, you've got Rush. Now, I will say, I feel like Rush is the one player you don't have to worry about if you're golden. He is a great piece to have as an in-game leader, just does his job. Sure, he's had his own motivation issues that's made his individual form suffer, but generally he's not going to be someone who complains. Seems like he's a good teammate by all accounts. I hope, personally, he can become like a pure entry again, really embrace that role and go back to being like the apex of NA that he was at Optic for my money. So I hope if they do that, that's going to activate the tactical style of golden. You've got some frag with automatic. Who knows what they're going to do? Scrilluminati. You know, you're starting to get like the shapings of a half-decent team together here. And then Sticko, we don't really know yet what role he's going to play. Obviously, just standing in at the moment. So let's be real. The team lineup for Cloud9 isn't good at the moment. Like, it's not going to do any damage at a big tournament like the Major, right? It's probably not going to do damage generally against the top 10 teams, right? But you've now got a piece here that you can build around. So you know what? In the future, add another player, and I reckon you're starting to get in position to be a pretty good team, especially if it's a star fragger, if you can lure a big name to come over. Now you're in position. So one thing you can do if you're Cloud9 is there are always rumors, there have been some recently, about maybe there's unrest in Team Liquid. Now, not necessarily as in they hate each other, but I've often pointed this out. Team Liquid isn't like the Cloud9 lineups where there was a core of people who were friendly and then they picked up people based on whether they liked them politically or wanted to play with them. Team Liquid has been more about business where they'll go out and get the big names for you, but they're very much putting together a professional squad and it's now your job to play together. So hence, there have been rumours of many of these players from Team Liquid, admittedly, obviously some more in the past when it was different players, leaving, going to Cloud9. It just never happened, that's all. So I actually do think if you wait around, if Team Liquid bomb the Major, if Team Liquid don't do well at a couple of other big tournaments, sure, they get that one every few months that rescues them. But one day, this is certainly a possibility that Elige or NAF or Twist, one of them might be available. And if any of them are available, that's a sick pick of your Cloud9. You immediately go for that. And now you've got the star player you can build around. I think that teams generally along these lines need to start thinking more in a stepping stone approach. Don't think of the one move now that makes you the #1 team in the world. There isn't going to be one in terms of one player out, one player in for the majority of teams out there. What you do instead is you think, what is the direction I want to go in? And does this one player move get me further in that direction? If it does, then next time you come to make another move, you are closer to the direction you want to go. There's less distance to be covered. Now the next move might be the one that makes you the #1 team in the world, that puts you up to that elite A-class, S-class status, elite tier, best in the world. That could really happen. So this is a paradigm shifting from the old world way of thinking about how to make roster moves, but it's especially poignant right now due to all the business concerns, incredibly high buyouts, all these restrictions because people want to keep together the core to play at the Major and retain their Legends spot. So here's the thing. I understand that people are underwhelmed by this squad. I am overall when I consider they won the Major and they had some fantastic pieces. I don't feel like they got anything in return for those pieces. That doesn't really make sense, the business side of it personally. But look at Jack's MO, the owner of Cloud9. First of all, he listens to the players a lot. So he's not going to make snap calls generally. Also, he wants players that join to have good work ethic, the right personality fit. So what it means is he bides his time, he looks for his spots and angles, but when he does pull the trigger, we're not talking about on this move here necessarily, this is more of a low-key move, he will make big moves and he will spend money and he will go out there and make blockbuster things happen when the time is right. He's done it in League of Legends again and again for the last few years. Then you have in Overwatch, where he literally bought two of the best teams in the world, mashed them together, like they trimmed them down. Eventually, they won the Overwatch League. He's done it with Cloud9 previously, where obviously he chopped and changed the entire original lineup. Then more recently, after the player break last year, he took out the old kind of washed up players, brought in new stars. They were able to eventually have all top fours and win the fucking Major, an unthinkable accomplishment for an NA team. So I do trust the process generally with Jack. It's just that I think this is more of a 1-2 step process than this is the move and we think that this is the team right now. Because obviously they still have to replace Sticko, but if they can prove something, if this can be a proof of concept, then it's going to be a lot easier to replace Sticko or bring in a star talent elsewhere in the lineup if you want. This video was kindly supported by Dean Tanglis, Gardner Wilson, Andreas Snazore Westerlund, Alex Adams, Eddie Wingfors, Daniel Yordanov, Robert Baxter, Travis Greb, Kyla Harris, James Harding, Caesar, and special thanks go out to Matt Shakowski and Jerky's Minion in particular. Want teasers for my upcoming content? How about asking me a question for my monthly AMA? Do you want to take part in a discussion about esports with me? How about suggesting a topic or a guest for my content? Put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today.